Welcome everybody to Tex-Mex Nerd Feed. My name is Mex, and welcome to the very first live podcast. This is my very first podcast. This is my first time ever going live at all. So there's a lot more to it than I expected. So if there's anything off that you can see, if it's audio, if it's video, whatever it might be, just let me know in the comments section, and I'll see what I can do to fix it. So I'm going to start out with some updates. Tex got back to me and he said that he is going to be doing his videos, his scripted and edited videos, every Wednesday. Problem being with him not really being able to come over to my place to record, he needs to accumulate his stuff, his camera, his microphone, so on and so forth, whatever he might need. So until that point, we have some videos in our backlog that I'm going to be editing and uploading for him on Wednesday. So this coming Wednesday, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a video that it's the second part to our Everything Wrong with Batman video that we did. And it's pretty much just titled Everything Wrong with the DCEU. It'll kind of coincide with this video that I'm doing today. Today, I want to talk about, can the DCEU survive Endgame? What I mean by that is, with as great of an experience and phenomenon that Marvel's Avengers Endgame was, can DC really stay, DC movies really stay afloat in regards to competition with Marvel or the MCU? So, as I said before in my channel update video, I have a docket of things that I would like to go through. I guess I should get this out of the way now. If you want more of this content, or if you want to see what Tex has coming on Wednesdays, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. I don't know if everybody got the notification that's subscribed now that I am actually live right now, but if you hit the notification bell, the way it's supposed to work is that you will be notified the moment I go live. Excuse me. So, this is going to be a weird situation for me because I'm used to being able to make mistakes and edit everything out, and it's not necessarily going to work out that way this time around. So, excuse me. So, it's like these burps, I'm just going to have to keep them in because it's live. So, it's going to be a little bit awkward for me at first. So, just kind of bear with me. If there's anything that you see that I can do, or do better, just kind of go ahead and let me know. I'm always okay with constructive criticism. So I guess what we should do is get started. What we're going to be talking about today is what DCEU can do to compete against the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I have here that it's kind of obvious that DC is not really up to par with Marvel, especially right now. We have so much backlash from the recent casting of, can't remember his name, Cedric Diggory, the guy who played, whatever, with him being cast as Batman in the Matt Reeves Batman movie. There's a lot of backlash. A lot of people aren't happy about it. I agree. We did a video on it before that there are much better options to play the role of Batman, but this is what we have. So this is what we've got. But then you have not only how, I don't want to say how bad DC's been doing, but they haven't been doing the best. So what can... There's a motorcycle. So they haven't been doing the best. So what can they do to compete with Marvel, who had just put out the most amazing spectacle of a movie, which was Endgame? So what I have here is... So I went to social media, Facebook and Instagram, and asked people what they think of the of the current DCEU and of or what they can do to kind of fix things. So I've accumulated some answers that I got on there. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because I'll be taking to the social media platforms to kind of ask these questions, these opinions on certain videos that I'm going to be doing in the future. So this is going to be what I'm going to be doing from now on. Going to be proposing questions or having discussions based on things, and I want everybody involved. So follow us on social media so you can answer those questions when I ask them. Right now we have... Well, maybe I can zoom in a bit. Okay, so let's get with that. So, one of my friends on Facebook, when I asked, what can DC do? They said that they enjoy the movies. They might not be as funny as Marvel movies, but they have their own style, which is good. And I completely agree. To elaborate on that, there are so many different types of humor, and with the difference of characters that Marvel has versus DC and vice versa, there should be a different type of comedy. So I forget exactly where it was that I saw it, but Flash kind of making fun of the fact that Batman had to be at a PTA meeting. The fact that the brooding, dark Batman had to be at a PTA meeting. It was just funny, and Flash wouldn't shut up about it. And the funny part that Batman did was just continuously glare at the Flash, and that's Well, I apologize about that. That is Batman's characteristic. So you shouldn't really deviate from the characteristics of Batman to try to make a funny joke or whatever. For instance, something's bleeding from Ben Affleck's Batman in Justice League. So just kind of stick to the characters that you have. There is no reason you need to deviate from it. So they do have their own style, which I agree is good if they use it the right way. I'm not necessarily sure that the movies really did the comedy the right way, but I know that in the animated movies, shows, comics, so on and so forth, there is a bit of humor that works for DC. It's not necessarily the same as Marvel, but it definitely works. So I'm going to go into another one now. All right. So, I've always liked the storylines of the DC universe. Unfortunately, outside of horse-beating Batman, out of the horse-beating Batman gets, there isn't much else. I've said it time and time again that you have these actors that have been cast as Batman, as Batman, and they're not really top tier. They get the job done, whatever. Some of them are absolutely terrible. Some of them are absolutely amazing, or at least have amazing parts about the way they've portrayed Batman. This is my biggest problem with Robert Pattinson. I remembered his name. Robert Pattinson being cast as Batman is that I don't necessarily think he's going to be the worst. I'm not basing my opinion on him off of a movie that came out when I was in like my early years of high school. That's definitely not the case. I did base my opinion off of his performance in that, and the fact that he can't really portray appropriate emotions. He just kind of looks emo, and everybody thought that was just the character. To me, he portrayed the same exact characteristics as not Edward, Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter. So I don't necessarily think it was just the character he was playing, unless maybe he just or he was directed to act the same way for Cedric. But apparently, from what I researched before he was even cast, when he was just a rumor, he was supposed to be like focusing on modeling or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, the kind of face that he was giving throughout all of Twilight and the bit that he was in Harry Potter was kind of like a model, a supermodel's angry face, I guess. Not really a Batman brooding face, but like an angry face. And I was like, oh, he's like an attractive person, so why not? He can definitely be a model. Apparently, he was actually still focusing on some acting, but in indie films. And I guess from what I've been told, he was absolutely amazing in it. So I don't know. I haven't seen them. And I know everybody tells me you have to see every single movie in the world to be able to make an opinion. No, you really don't. I've seen some of his acting and it was not good. Apparently, it has gotten better. People can people can improve and people can change. So, but that's my thing, is that the horse beating the Batman gets. There have been, like 8 people to play Batman? How many people have there to have played Iron Man? 1, Robert Downey Jr. He was absolutely amazing, and he will be the end-all be-all of Iron Man from this point out. I'm not sure if I could swear or not, so I just said dang and damn mixed together. But anyway, I'm pretty damn sure that that's how it's going to be for a pretty long time. Chris Evans is Captain America, Chris Hemsworth is Thor, so on and so forth. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That's one of the things that DC is missing. There are these people who were put on this earth by God himself to play these specific roles, and Marvel didn't really mess up in their casting decisions. It was absolutely amazing. I feel like there is a good level of dedication from the actors as well to actually portray these characters that we're not really getting from DC as well. So every time we get somebody who's not top tier Robert Downey Jr. Tier actor for Batman, they just reboot Batman. So we're going on to like our 9th Batman actor to play the character and portray the character. So it's definitely not something that I like. And guess they're saying when it does get done, when they try to branch away from Batman, it feels like the abomination of Hulk all over again. See what I did there? Abomination. They just can't get it right. And I think this is mostly in reference to things like the Green Lantern movie. That was very poorly received. I don't really understand why. It's been years since I've seen it, but I know it wasn't completely memorable. It's not like Aquaman where I could sit and watch it over and over and over again. But that's that. So, gonna go into another one. So, my friend Cassidy, she said that they each have their own styles and unique characteristics, which I did touch on that already. They really do, and their characteristics are, they're unique to the point where I can't say that I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I'm about a casual fan, and I enjoy the movies, but I'm a huge DC fan because I like the characters and the characteristics that DC has. So for me being a DC fanboy, I can still admit that when it comes to the movies, they are saying that they're subpar is a bit generous. And then she says that she'll always be a Marvel girl because she likes the comedy. And I can definitely see that a lot of people do have that same opinion. They think, hey, you know what? I enjoy the comedy that Marvel has to offer, and DC's too dark and gritty. Batman is dark and gritty. Superman is not. So Batman versus Superman, one thing that I can say that they messed up exponentially is Doomsday, number 1. But number 2 was the characteristics of Superman and the environment around him. They should try to create a sort of, they should have created an opposing environment where on this side you have Batman, the dark, gritty, angry person, and then you have Superman, the beacon of hope, the Boy Scout. That's just his personality in the comics movies, anything, shows. That's just how Superman is, and they just decided to make him dark and gritty just because they know Batman. They've done him 50 million times, so it's a familiar. I don't know how I'd say it. It's a familiar theme for them to go with, so they just roll with it. They don't give a shit. They just, you know what? We're just going to make Batman with different costumes. That's their mindset when they come to make these movies. And I do like when things are gritty, dark and gritty, but you apologize about that. You have a situation in which Marvel has the comedy down pat, and DC noticed that and they tried to copy it, but they didn't stay true to their source material while copying it. So they botched it so bad. So you look at Justice League, for instance, and you can see that they have many attempts at comedy, mostly with Batman and Aquaman. So you have the dark, brooding Batman trying to be the comic relief, and then you have the king of the oceans of Atlantis, who is supposed to be serious, as the comic relief, when in reality it most likely should have been the Flash, which he was too, but it was just his level of stupidity was what made him the comic relief, and it should have been maybe Cyborg. But the issue is that they're not staying true to their source material, which Tex and I discussed in our video that we're going to be posting on Wednesday. But we'll get deeper into that. But like I said, Marvel has comedy, and a lot of people don't see it just because of the movies. But when you kind of delve further than just the movies, you can really see that they have a lot more to offer than just the movies, and they have a lot more comedy too. So here's another one from social media. I would avoid the world building and focus on the individual characters and stories like Wonder Woman and Aquaman. They seem to struggle when they have to juggle too many characters like BVS, Justice League, Suicide Squad. And I do agree that that Justice League and Suicide Squad did not really do what they wanted. So I completely disagree with the fact that they need to avoid the world building. I had a discussion with this with my brother. He said DC just needs to stick to their individual characters, so on and so forth, and just kind of do them and just kind of stick to their individual stories, similar to that of the Dark Knight trilogy, so on and so forth. And I made the argument, which kind of like made him agree with me, that there should when it comes to comic book movies, comic book based anything, there should always be world building. You should never have just a 3-part thing, a 2-part thing, and then it's done. You have to reboot it in a couple of years. Because keep in mind that these movies are based off of comic books. So imagine if comic books did the same thing. You get a 5-issue miniseries, and you might have enjoyed it, you might not have, but then next year you get a 5-issue miniseries of the same thing, rebooted, a couple things changed, and then you might have liked it, you might not have, but then don't worry, because next year they're going to reboot it, they're going to have a 5-issue miniseries, and if you keep doing that, you keep having this 5-issue miniseries for Batman, for Flash, so on and so forth, you don't get to that world building that I think is necessary to actually compete with the MCU, because obviously the MCU did it. That's how we went from Iron Man to the rest of the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Thanos, Black Order, so on and so forth. You have all of these characters and all of these worlds that they added into the MCU, and they created this huge universe, and that's what the comics do as well. So you have, without the world building, like I said, let's look at this from the perspective of comic books, because those are the source material. If you don't have the world building, you never have the Crisis on Infinite Earths story arc. You never have the Flashpoint. You never have the Dark Side Wars, where Batman becomes a god. You never have. There are so many story arcs that you never have, and even most recently, you never have that Dark Knight's Metal story. You never have the Doomsday Clock, which isn't even finished yet, I don't believe. So there needs to be more than just leading up to a bad guy, beating him, and then that's it. And then you're done for another couple of years. There needs to be a lot more than that if you're actually going to compete with MCU, and if you're actually going to be doing justice to the source material. So, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, absolutely amazing, but they still belong to the DCEU, so they still belong to a bigger world. Shazam was not that great, but he still belongs to the bigger world, and he's there. Although the movie wasn't great, they can still use him further, which is like Mr. Mind talking to Dr. Savannah. You might end up with that evil society, or Monster Society of Evil, whatever it's called. But you can end up with these big groups of bad guys against the big groups of good guys. So you have that small world building. But I think my issue is, like how it's said here, that they seem to struggle to have to juggle too many characters. BVS, I think that them adding Lex in as pretty much the main antagonist was the problem there. Justice League, my argument for that is that it's not necessarily that they had to juggle all those characters in that movie, and that's what made it bad. I think it was that they threw those characters together, mashed them up, and tried to create something on the level of Marvel or of Avengers. So DC saw the success of the Avengers and they wanted to copy it, and you can't blame them. They're a company, that's what they're supposed to do. So, what they did was, essentially, the way I explain this one usually is that Marvel has a recipe for how they created this universe, this MCU. And DC was like, you know what? They made a lot of money off of that recipe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the recipe, but I don't have the time and I don't want to take the resources to actually go through the whole recipe. So I'm just going to find things that I think are unnecessary in this recipe, and the finished product should be pretty much the same. And that's exactly what they did. It took Marvel 5 movies to lead into the Avengers movie. It took DC 3. There's a problem there. And in those movies, they did add... Marvel added characters and introduced characters, I wouldn't say flawlessly, but like it wasn't like a main focus. It wasn't like you could see where they were headed with it. DC just kind of, they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to be doing a Justice League. This is what you need to know to get there. Just get to the theater when it releases. Instead of actually letting us enjoy the process of them getting to the Justice League, they just tried to throw the Justice League at us. And Marvel, we got to enjoy the journey. It's not the end, it's the journey. So with Marvel, we got to enjoy all of these movies. This is, what is it, 22 films? And with DC, they just kind of want the end product of that Marvel has to kind of transcribe into their formula, and it just doesn't work. And Suicide Squad, I think that was another issue, is that they didn't really develop time to introduce these characters. Think about it in the aspect of comic books again. The Suicide Squad was established from already known enemies of the DC superheroes. In the movie, they weren't ever introduced, so there's absolutely no reason they should have existed. So the only people we know in there are, we see Batman, and was that the first time we saw the Flash? I'm not exactly sure. It might have been the first time we saw the Flash, but anyway, they just they didn't lead us into what they wanted to do. They just kind of threw it right at us. Okay, so there's another one from a friend of mine, and it's a bit long. Gonna take a drink quick. So, My friend Todd says, I think DC heroes are simply overpowered. And I can definitely see where he's coming from. Superman is definitely one of the most well-known DC heroes aside from Batman, and he is extremely overpowered, especially in the movies that you see in the DCEU. So, in the end, it's essentially him just saying that the Marvel heroes are more relatable than that of the DC heroes, and I do agree that that's like a big difference between the different companies. Is that the one company creates heroes that are very relatable, and it's like one thing that Stan Lee kind of would pride himself on, is that you never know walking down the street who might actually have something more to offer, I guess. And I do love that idea, and it's just when I try to delve into a fantasy world, it's usually because I just kind of want to get away from real life. Like, I like the idea of Superman being overly powered, but he's limited by that of his morals and ethics. So he has the potential to wipe out every person on Earth, but he won't because he's too nice of a guy. But that also leaves some range of motion for what DC calls Elseworld stories, which is just stories that take place in another universe of the multiverse, to kind of think about, well, what would Superman be like if he wasn't? So kind of like the Brightburn movie that just came out. I haven't seen it yet, but it kind of plays on the same idea. What if somebody had these powers that Superman had and they didn't use them for good? So it's kind of the same thing. It's more along the lines of, what if you as a person had these exponential powers that you could use to kind of help people, save the universe, so on and so forth. So that was the last of the social media comments that I wanted to go through. So that's what my friends had to say. Like I said, if you want to see these questions and respond to them, go ahead and follow our social media. Our Facebook and Instagram is in the description below, so you can just go ahead and click that. It'll link you over to our page. You can follow us, and you can just kind of continue to answer questions, and I'll just go through them with whatever question we might have. So I'm going to move on to another part of my docket here that I have. So, what has DC been doing in comparison to Marvel? So I already talked about the characters and the actors, and I think that is a big part of it, is that, like, you need to be able to care for these characters in order to get the same effect that you have in Endgame. The reason people cried when, I know it's been a while, but spoiler warnings for Endgame if anybody cares. There's a reason we all cried when Tony died. There's a reason we all felt happy for Steve when he got to live his life with Peggy, so on and so forth. They build a big one is we can all empathize with Thor and his depression, and we definitely care for him because Marvel took the time to build these characters and make us care for them. We've invested in these characters. DC does not want to do that. They do it in their comic books. They do it in their animated movies and shows, but they need to realize that they're trying to reach a whole new market with the movies. Granted, the comic book nerds are going, the hardcore fans are going to go, but they also need to try to They need to try to kind of gear it towards somebody who doesn't even know that DC Comics is a thing. So they need to take the time to introduce these characters. When it comes to Batman, you don't really need to introduce him 50 million times. So unfortunately, we are getting another Batman reboot. Ben Affleck is no longer Batman, and the Robert Pattinson movie, the Matt Reeves movie, is no longer part of DCEU. So it's its own standalone movie. And I think that that is a big problem in regards to what DC has been doing versus what Marvel has been doing. Marvel took all of these, all of their MCU movies, 22 of them I think there are, and just kind of built off of each other, I guess. DC has their DC Extended Universe, the DCEU, and they also have a bunch of different standalone movies that like have different not different characters, different actors, different origin stories, different universes. Like it's just all different. So instead of like putting the resources, time, and effort into creating an entire world or universe that people can grow to love, they just kind of, you're like, you know what, I want to do a Joker movie, but we still need Leto for the DCEU, so we're gonna have Joaquin Phoenix play him now, and it's not gonna be any part in it. So, if Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man died in Endgame, but he was only Iron Man in 2 movies, and there were 30 other people to play him, and play him differently, and have different origin stories and different types of Iron Man, would you really feel the same about his death? I don't think so. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of like hearing that actually, a week ago, somebody died near where I live. How much does that affect you? Not much at all. Now, what would you do if you heard that a family member died? That would affect you a lot more because you spend a lot more time with that person. You've grown to know that person. You've developed a relationship with that person. Unfortunately, there really is no type of relationship between a character and a consumer, but it's the same idea. You have this time with these specific characters that you kind of develop an emotional connection to. If it's somebody that you barely even know, it's not really going to affect you too much. So that's, I guess, in the end, what Marvel or what DC is doing different than Marvel is that Marvel is taking the time to actually make you care for their characters, and DC is just throwing them at you and saying, hey, give us your money. I apologize. I keep having to look at my docket just because I'm going to lose myself, forget what I've said and what I haven't. And this is unscripted. I just have like kind of notes to go by. So I'm going to end up probably repeating myself eventually. And I know I already have. All right. So I guess to kind of finish my thoughts on DCEU, it's really just how people say about DC's humor and lack thereof. Like I said before, that DC does offer comedy and humor and different emotions. DC isn't just a one-trick pony. Marvel has kind of done the comedy better, but I mean, come on, there are so many characters in the DC universe that they're not all Batman. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of consumers think, is that, hey, DC is Batman. So Superman is dark, gritty, brooding. Batman is dark, gritty, and brooding. Everybody is just dark, gritty, and brooding. And the Warner Brothers studios, haven't really done much to actually say, hey, you know what? No, these characters are actually different. How about you come watch these movies so you can kind of get to know what they're like. No, because there's no reason to watch them, because Warner Brothers, the studio executives, are going to make the decision, or the writers and directors, whatever, are going to make the decision that everybody has to be Batman. And it's the same thing as like every villain that you encounter has to be laughing and joking and so on and so forth. They all have to resemble the Joker. So DC can't get past Batman and the Joker. And it's unfortunate because they have a lot of characters that they can really do a lot with because of the type of people they are, type of characters they are, and the influence they have over the main superheroes, the Justice League, so on and so forth. So, what can DC actually do to try to compete with Marvel? To me, I think a big takeaway is that you need to stick to one world, one universe. I'm not opposed to world building. Like my one friend said that that's what they need to focus on not doing. I think that they do need to focus on world building, but build one world. If you want to branch off to a multiverse, do like the comics did. Build up to that. I think that people think that the DC screws up world building because of the fact that they are just better at creating individual movies. But in reality, I think it's just that they're not world building. They're just throwing a world at you. When you build a house, what is the most important part? It's the foundation. And DC doesn't give two shits about their foundation. They just want to sell the movie tickets. And so let's go back to what DC can do to compete. They need to focus on creating that one world. They need to stick to their guns. They need to find one actor to play a specific character and keep it that way. I think that it's difficult. Like I said, with Batman, there have been so many people to play Batman already. And it's just going to get worse because now you have Robert Pattinson. He's not going to be the DCEU Batman. So if the DCEU is supposed to continue with Batman, which the Justice League and the DC universe should most likely have Batman, they are going to need to recast again because Affleck is out. Henry Cavill might be out too, and I've seen a bunch of stuff where he's no longer going to be Superman, but he was actually scheduled to play Superman in the most recent Shazam movie. So it was just scheduling conflicts with another. I don't know what he was doing, but there were scheduling conflicts, but he was supposed to be Superman. That's why they didn't show Superman's face at the end. So stick to one world. Stick to your one actor for the characters that you've established. So yeah, we agree that some of these people haven't really been the best, but as we saw with Aquaman, in his individual or in his solo movie, he had some great character development, and he grew into what we, at least more closely, what we contribute to an Aquaman character. He started to actually act like the king of the seven seas, like the king of Atlantis. So with the Flash, you need a lot of character development for the Flash to actually continue. But I was told that, or not told, I read that the Flash movie that was supposed to be coming out was supposed to be Flashpoint Paradox. How in the hell are you going to go from Batman vs. Superman, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, both Wonder Woman movies, and then Flashpoint Paradox? You're just going to change all of it in a 5-movie span. There's, like I said, they need to stick to their foundation. Another thing is that I think that Warner Brothers the studio execs at Warner Brothers needs to kind of stop with the restraints that they put on their writers and directors when creating these movies, because a lot of them are, from what I've read in articles, is that a lot of them have ideas that would be absolutely amazing for these movies, but the studio execs don't really go for it. They won't allow it. They will impose certain rules. I'm pretty sure the comedy aspect was a rule imposed by a studio exec because they wanted to compete with Marvel. And guess what? The comedy sucked ass. There was nothing good about the comedy in Justice League whatsoever. I can't think of a single memorable comedic point in that movie. Even something along the lines of Endgame, with as serious as it is, had much better comedy than what Justice League had. So, take your time building the world. Definitely take your time building the world. But also stick to your guns. Keep building this world with the actors and characters that you currently have. So I have a feeling that the DCEU is most likely not going to last, considering the fact that they are going to have to recast Batman. And because they don't want to do that, they're either going to recast Batman a bunch of different times, or they're going to come up with like a stupid way to kill him off or something. I don't necessarily think that the latter part is going to be the case, considering the fact that he's probably like their biggest character, but you never know. You honestly never know. A lot of people are thinking that they can do like a Batman Beyond movie in lieu of Ben Affleck no longer being Batman, but that's another situation in which you need to build up to a Batman Beyond movie. You can't just be like, Batman Beyond. Oh, really? But who's Bruce Wayne? Who's Amanda Waller? I mean, obviously we know who Bruce Wayne and Amanda Waller are from Suicide Squad, and obviously Bruce Wayne has been portrayed like 50 million times, but you need to build to that. And I'm not saying don't do a Batman Beyond movie. I'm saying do it, but build to it appropriately. You need to try to attract non-fans, because these non-fans are the ones who are going to be paying their money to go see your movie. And if it's not anything on par with the MCU, they're going to stop. They're going to stop eventually. Speaking of Batman Beyond, another thing is that Michael B. Jordan was considered to replace Henry Cavill as Superman, and I liked his idea. He didn't want to play Superman unless he played a specific Superman, which is African American, and it's not Clark Kent whatsoever. It's just a different guy who kind of takes on the identity of Superman. And to me, that's one of those things where it's like, all right, I appreciate what he's doing. He's trying to make sure that fans don't get disappointed by kind of deviating from the comics. So that's definitely what I like. I hate when people try to deviate from the comics just to try to feed their ego and try to show that they have some sort of creative seed in their brain or whatever, but they have to use already established characters for the clout. So I agree with what he said. He wants to do a specific character, a specific Superman that is already established in the comics and is African American. He could represent that person. But to me, you can't just throw that Superman into the universe that we already have. So if you're going to do that, you need to build up to it. So if you're going to do anything extravagant, you need to really build up to it. So as I take a drink, makes me think of something else that I want to discuss. Green Lantern, show the symbol. Green Lantern is one of my favorite characters of all time. I like Hal, I like Kyle Rayner. Unfortunately, the Green Lantern movie was not well received that we got. And because of that, people are afraid to actually accept a new Green Lantern movie, or people are afraid to, the studio execs are afraid to actually create a Green Lantern movie because they don't want the same backlash, the same stigma that the previous one did with Ryan Reynolds or whatever. But if you do it right, if you do the thing and you do it right and you don't fuck it up, it works. John Tron quote. But anyway, if you stick to your source material and you try to create a movie based off of that source material while using the same characteristics, I think it would be perfectly fine. It's another one that's going to have to do, you're going to have to do some world building, but it's not going to be as, it's not going to be as much as what, like, leading into Doomsday would be. But essentially what the Green Lantern is it's a core that consists of space cops, I guess, is the best way to explain it. So the proposed synopsis that came out a while ago for the Green Lantern movie, it was going to be a buddy cop movie similar to that of Lethal Weapon. And I can picture a Kilowog Hal Jordan movie running that same way, and it would be absolutely amazing. Hal Jordan and Kilowog together are absolutely so much fun to watch. They have such a great dynamic, and a lot of people don't really know that because they don't venture past the movie. So if they don't have anything other than a Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, they don't know who the hell Green Lantern is. So it does require some world building. You don't just jump right into it assuming that everybody already knows who everybody is. But an entire Green Lantern movie doesn't even have to take place on Earth more than the first 10 minutes. So from that point on, you could introduce Chip, you could introduce Sinestro, you could introduce other Lantern Corps. That would be absolutely amazing. And don't just stick to the Yellow Lanterns or the Sinestro Corps, because that's been done already. You can branch off and do a lot more with the color spectrum. And Green Lantern not only is one of my favorite characters, but the story arcs that the Green Lantern series has to offer are absolutely amazing. There's no reason people wouldn't want to watch those movies. The visuals are absolutely amazing. They're so stunning with all the colors, the animations, so on and so forth. And just the stories themselves are just so captivating. So I don't understand why it's taken this long to kind of try again at the Green Lantern movie, but I'm pretty sure it's just the stigma that is around Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern movie. Actually, that's the question that I have for anybody who is watching, either in the comment section or on social media. Just kind of let me know what you think of the Green Lantern movie, specifically what don't you like, because I'm pretty sure like 95% of you don't like it. My big thing was the Parallax space cloud. There's no reason Parallax needs to be a space cloud. Same reason Galactus shouldn't be a space cloud. But I'm just curious to see what other people think. So for me, that's it for my docket. This was my very first live podcast. Like I said before, let me know how I did, if there's anything I can change in the comments section. Make sure to follow us on social media, because I'm going to be asking questions and going through them in the first part of the podcast every week. So this coming Wednesday, like I said, we are going to have an Everything Wrong with the DCEU video that Tex and I recorded a while back, actually. And we are going to edit that and upload that for Wednesday. Then a week from now, Sunday at 8 p.m., I am going to be doing my live podcast that is going to, I'm most likely for at least 30 minutes going to stream an E3 presentation, because it's going to be happening 30 minutes after I start. It's at 8:30. I don't remember what showcase it is, but I'm going to be streaming an E3 presentation, because might as well. And I'm going to be saving. Excuse me. I'm going to be saving next week for a video game video. So the podcast next week is going to be based around E3 expectations. I guess like most anticipated games, so on and so forth. Speculations, throw them on our Facebook page if you are speculating any certain announcements. I don't really remember the schedule. I could pull it up here quick. But depending on the schedule, all right. So okay, so we have Bethesda on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. We have Microsoft at 4 p.m. Why would they put the 8:30 p.m. before the 4 p.m.? But anyway, so it starts on Sunday. So the question that I have is, what are your expectations for E3? Do you have any predictions or anticipated games? Because we will watch at least the Bethesda one together, and we can discuss from that point on. But I'm going to say that for me, I'm kind of hoping for just kind of generic. I'm hoping for a good Microsoft presentation because I don't have an Xbox One, but I'm kind of hoping that they give me a reason to pick one up. I am a PlayStation fanboy, but if they have something cool to announce, like a Fable, a new Fable game or whatever, I will probably pick up an Xbox One. So I'm hoping that Microsoft has something cool to show. But other than that, I did want to do one last thing. I have each time I end a stream, I'm going to be doing a meme of the week, which is going to be representative of our channel, and it is going to be based off of video games, movies, comic books, so on and so forth. So I found this on Facebook. But when it comes to the upcoming weeks, go ahead and let me know what you guys, or send some memes to our Facebook page, and whatever has the most likes, or if none of them have likes or whatever, I'll just kind of pick my favorite one, and that will be our meme of the week. So this one, we have a Captain America meme. All right, so I guess that's gonna be it for me. That was my very first live stream. So another thing I wanted to add was on days that I don't really have a docket planned or like a theme to go with, and I just kind of want to discuss nerd talk. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to stream a game, and we could just kind of all converse at that point. Just you can ask me questions, you could ask each other questions, so on and so forth. Just kind of have a conversation, have some talk about some nerd stuff, which is the sole reason this channel was created. So go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything else. Go ahead and follow us on social media. Like I said, we are going to be doing quite a bit of stuff there now. I'm going to be getting opinions of you guys, answering them on the podcast, and share some memes with us. That's what the internet is best for, is memes. So let's keep them coming. And I think that's going to be it for me. Stay tuned for our video on Wednesday, and I'll see you next week.